¿Qué tal a todos y bienvenidos a este webinario de HighQA Connect para Polyworks? De la mano con HighQA vamos a ver cómo podemos acelerar la planeación de medición desde los dibujos técnicos hasta la medición en 3D. Antes de comenzar, me gustaría comentar algunos puntos importantes. En este webinario, sus micrófonos estarán silenciados. Si hay alguna duda, escríbela en el recuadro de la parte inferior de la pantalla, en la sección de preguntas y respuestas. Estas serán atendidas al final de la presentación o bien enviaremos correo electrónico para su respuesta. El webinario se estará grabando para que puedan verlo después y estará disponible en un par de días. Bien, yo soy Jorge Borboya, gerente comercial de Borboya Metrology, y en un video de aplicación veremos a Chad Helland, él es VP de cuentas estratégicas. También, tras bambalinas, estará lista Sterling en los controles, gerente de mercadotecnia, y nos estará apoyando con esta presentación. Los puntos importantes que tocaremos hoy en el webinario son quién es Borboya Metrology, acerca de HighQA, qué es HighQA Connect para Polyworks, un video demostrando el producto y finalmente la sección de preguntas y respuestas. Bien, Borboya Metrology nace hace más de 25 años con el objetivo de encontrar soluciones de medición para la industria en México. Con esto en mente, nos dimos a la tarea de representar a las firmas más importantes y brindar el servicio postventa. Algunos de nuestros socios comerciales son Renancho, Benzel, que hacen máquinas de medición por coordenadas, Dorsey, que hace equipos de visión, comparadores ópticos, HighQA, que hace software de administración de calidad, Reiko Fixtures, Precision Granite, mesas de granito, DK Fixture, sistemas de clampeo para piezas pequeñas y equipos de CT, Western Gauge, hacemos medición en piso, Metronor, sistemas de alta exactitud portable, Vite, que hacemos sistemas modulares de sujeción, Innovametric, el producto que también estamos demostrando el día de hoy, que es Polyworks. Como lo mencioné, uno de nuestros principales socios comerciales es HighQA. HighQA es una empresa generadora de software para la administración de la calidad en la manufactura, y su objetivo es realizar más sencillo el ciclo completo de calidad en la fabricación, no importando si está en aeroespacial, automotriz, médica, energética, defensa o alguna otra. HighQA es un software integral de control de calidad de manufactura que optimiza la planificación, inspección y generación de informes de calidad. Tiene herramientas intuitivas que ayudan a que sus equipos entreguen piezas con la más alta calidad, a tiempo y dentro de presupuesto. El nombre de HighQA 360 es porque cubre todo el proceso de calidad en la manufactura. En las tablas podemos ver 4 secciones principales. La primera es la planeación del trabajo, que comienza con el baloneo automático de dibujos, que extrae el GD&T y características a controlar, definición de muestreos y operaciones de manufactura. Posterior a esto, pues tenemos la sección de inspección, ya sea en el laboratorio o en piso, con equipos automáticos o manuales. Monitoreo de SPC y administración de gauges también es incluido en el software. El siguiente paso sería generar y poder enviar reportes de todo tipo, desde primera pieza, PPAPs, no conformidades, etc. Finalmente, y aunque no hablaremos mucho en este webinario, también podemos tener la colaboración con nuestros proveedores para que todos podamos ver en tiempo real y anticiparnos a cualquier anomalía en calidad. Este software, aunque engloba todo el proceso de calidad en la manufactura, se puede integrar a sistemas ya existentes que tal vez atiendan solo un área específica de su sistema de calidad. Además de todo esto, está accesible dentro de solo una base de datos para que la información pueda estar disponible en tiempo real y para que quien tenga permiso de accederla. No más desconexiones dentro del sistema de calidad. Bien, HighQA es libre en software de calidad en la manufactura. Fue fundado en el 2017 y hoy en día se tienen más de 1,300 clientes en 5 continentes, lo cual corresponde a más de 20,000 usuarios a nivel mundial. Gracias a todos los puntos comunes entre HighQA e Innovametric, se ha podido dar esta colaboración. Entre estas coincidencias, pues destacan los valores compartidos, dado que ambos ponen al cliente en el centro del éxito, así como atender los desafíos cambiantes en la fabricación. La tecnología de primera clase, donde todo fluye fácilmente la información de un software a otro, potenciando ambas plataformas. Impacto al cliente, lo que al final se reduce a tener mejor calidad, en mejor costo, con menor esfuerzo y menos tiempo, eliminando posibles errores que en muchas veces ocasiona contratiempos en el futuro. Bien, el resultado de esta colaboración es que HighQA Connect para Polyworks, este desarrollo acelera el proceso de medición desde el baloneo, como ya lo dijimos, pasando por la programación y la generación de reportes. Bien, ¿cómo se está haciendo esta tarea hoy en día sin HighQA Connect para Polyworks? Tradicionalmente, los ingenieros de calidad reciben los dibujos 2D para balonearlos y para realizar la planificación de calidad. Y luego también los expertos en metrología convierten manualmente estos dibujos 2D a planes de inspección 3D en Polyworks. Esto conlleva algunos desafíos, como enumerar diferentes características GD&T y luego pasarlas al software de medición. En el proceso podríamos tener errores de tecleado, por ejemplo. Además, algunos de estos trabajos los hace ingeniería y luego los hace nuevamente control de calidad, y muchas veces en formas diferentes e incluso con software diferentes. Entonces existe una desconexión entre ambos departamentos. La idea es tener dos softwares conectados, HighQA, que realiza el baloneo automático, y Polyworks, que realiza la medición. HighQA transfiere la información de características y GD&T para que se pueda ser inspeccionada en Polyworks de forma rápida y precisa. La medición de la pieza pasa automáticamente de nuevo a HighQA para preparar los paquetes de información para el cliente. Así, ingeniería y control de calidad tienen el mismo software, una misma verdad. Bien, vamos a hacer una demostración del producto vía video, pero antes de comenzar con la demostración, quiero comentarles algunas cosas. Lo que verán será un caso de uso completo, desde el principio hasta el fin. Así que muestra la sinergia entre HighQA y Polyworks, con todos los componentes funcionando en conjunto. Puede ser que su configuración actual sea diferente, y eso es normal. Estos sistemas están diseñados para funcionar en cualquier entorno y configuración entre ambas plataformas, HighQA y Polyworks. No importa si está usando para producción o bien si está desarrollando un nuevo prototipo. HighQA conecta con Polyworks de forma simple y se adapta a los flujos de trabajo. Veremos el video.
We're going to start with something familiar. On the right, you'll see a model in Polyworks Inspector. On the left, you see a 2D drawing. This drawing could be a PDF, it could be an image, or it could be a scan, but in either case, there is no metadata in here. Typically, a CMM programmer has to look at this, interpret the GD&T they see, and transfer that over to the model on the right. We're going to focus specifically on this characteristic. We can see there's a diameter and a specifically called out tolerance, but there is no balloon numbers yet. To accomplish this, we'd select the circle tool over here, select our feature, and then evaluate the information that we see down here. Now our nominal is close, but we're going to make a small adjustment so it matches exactly. And then our tolerance has to be completely changed. Once that's complete, we'll verify our control matches, and if we had a balloon number, we would change that or enter that right here in this characteristic number field. Now, this is a relatively simple drawing with not a lot of characteristics on it, but imagine a scenario where we have 500 on here, which is a typical use case. There's three big problems with this. Number one, it's very data intensive. Number two, it's very easy to make an error, and not only that, but not catch it, so it would get out somewhere. But number three, it's also duplicated effort. This is typically already being performed by a quality engineer or a manufacturing engineer. Somebody's already done this work, and now we're repeating that. But what if there's a better way? Well, now there is, with HighQA Connect for Polyworks. So let's show that process. First things first, I'm going to remove my circle, and we'll minimize this. So now, on the left, you see Polyworks Export inside of HighQA Connect. To start this, we're just going to click on the feature, You can see we have an export button and a cancel, but as soon as I've clicked on that, it is now giving me step-by-step instructions on the model side of what I need to do to perform this. So I need to select a circular feature and then click export. Let's grab our circle tool, select our feature, and click export. As soon as we do that, it is now pushing that information over. Everything looks correct, and it's told us that it's complete by changing to green. All that data that got pushed over already resides inside HighQA and is being digitally transferred over. Now we'll just continue that process for the rest of this. Click on our second characteristic. We need to select our slot tool, grab our feature, and click export. Again, that's populating our information, and it's good. Next, we have this plane to the center of our hole. We already have our hole, so we'll just grab our plane tool, select that, and now we can select those two at the same time. Click export. As you can see, I didn't have to do that in order. I got a little bit ahead of myself, but it understands either way if I didn't need those instructions. In this case, I'll go with them the correct order. Very similar scenario, just a different plane to our circle. So I need my linear feature or two features to create that distance, which happen to be our circle and our plane. So I will make this plane quick, which happens to be plane 3. Make sure I have that selected again, as well as my circle, and export. There it is, and we're green. Last on this one, we have an angle feature. That happens to be right here with these two planes. So I'm just going to grab that, click, click, make sure I have both those selected. Export. There it is. If I click on this, I can see that information as well. That's page 1. Let's continue on to page 2 now. Now when we get to this page, we can see there's some darker boxes. That signifies to me that I have some datums that I need to address. Okay, so we're going to go back to centering this model here. And we're going to start by clicking on this box. And now we can see the first thing it's asking for is exporting datum A, which is what it says here. So I need to identify which one is A, which happens to be my slot feature here, the surface of that. So this is plane 3. I select that, export datum A. Next, I need to export for datum B, which happens to be my big hole feature here. So I'll select this plane here. Not that one, not that one. It's not that one. I don't have that one picked yet, so let's make that. Create our plane, export. Last, we need to do C, which is this bottom plane. We've got it identified as plane 2. I'll grab that, export. There we go. Now all of our planes are identified. So now we're going to actually identify this pattern. You can see those darker boxes are gone now. So now I need to identify my different hole patterns here. So I can take my circular tool, select my first of 4, second, third, fourth. And if I wanted to, I could make a pattern first, but I don't need to, so I'm just going to hold down Control and click my 4 circles and click Export. All of this data now is getting pushed over for these holes. You can see it happening in real time over here. There's my first of 4. Now we're on to our second of 4. And again, all of this typically would have been hand populated in the past. It's turned green. We are now complete. But another thing it's done as well is if I expand this pattern, we can see some stuff. Number one, this is 3 distinct characteristics that need to be checked. So we have 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3. But to take it a step further, we have it 4 times. So if I click on circle 7, you can see there's another delimiter on there that identifies which version of which. This is the first one, the second one, third, and fourth. Okay. Continuing on, we'll go to our number 7. Now in this case, all I need is datum A. So I'm just going to select datum A, export. 8th, I have a hole here that I have not built in yet. So I need to select my circular feature, which I have not identified yet. So I'll just grab my circle tool, grab it, and export. Oops, here's another thing that we're doing while we're populating this information. We're doing an evaluation. This is looking for an expected 18 with, no decimals on our millimeters. What we actually see is 18.0432, which is outside of our allowable delta. So this is validating that information the same time it's pushing that over and populating that. We can see that down here as well. Now if I cancel this, it will stick with the 18.043 and we will not be pushing any information. In this case, I'm going to override that, so it's going to push that information over there. Turn green, you can see our values are correct now. We'll continue on. Once again, this one happens to be just to a datum, so I can select my datum C and export. Green, we're complete. Last, once again, we just have a datum, so we can select our datum B and export. And just like that, we're done. That's the whole process from start to finish on this. Now, obviously, this is a lot of time savings on this smaller part, but that just grows with the amount of complexity. So next, we're going to go into showing what this looks like, how that data was actually generated inside HighQA. This is HighQA's Inspection Manager. We can see that a quality engineer or manufacturing engineer has already performed the ballooning process on this. We can also see down here the bill of characteristics that were generated from that. We have the requirements, the nominals, upper and lower tolerances, sampling rules. We even have those shown in alternate unit sets, in this case if they wanted to use inches instead. All of that resides inside the database. This is also the same exact part and job that we just used to push the data over to the Polyworks model. Now let's see how we actually generated that. I'm going to click on New and bring in my drawing. Once that's in here, I'm just going to click on Auto Balloon, and I'm going to change it to Ballooning All Pages, so that I'm doing more than one because I have 2 pages here. Once I click OK, this is going to identify the outside border of this, as well as the box for the title block, so I'm not working inside that. Then it's going to go top to bottom, left to right, ballooning all of the characteristics, putting boxes around those, and okay, and we're done. And populating the bill of characteristics down here in the bottom. Looking at our first one here, this should match what we see up here in the preview box. I can see my nominal, I can see my tolerancing, I can also see what my default tool that I've assigned for. All of that information resides inside here, and my next step is to make sure I review it. Once I've done that, that does 2 things. That takes me on to the next characteristic. It also marks this as reviewed, so if I get pulled away to do something in the meantime, I know where to come back to and where I need to complete so I can finish this process accurately and trustworthy. Same thing with this. I would continue on through the rest of these. Go on to my next page, validate this. Now we can see something here that didn't get caught. This isn't a perfect system, but we do have tools in there to make sure that we don't miss anything, whether it's a nice clean drawing or it's a hand-drawn drawing that was drafted in the 60s. So in this case, an easier way to see this would be to use this whiteout balloons button. Now imagine that we're looking at that 500 characteristic example again. This is going to be a lot busier than it is here. But turning this on hides all the balloons, which makes it a lot easier to see if I did miss something. So now I can just use my manual tool, draw a box around it. It'll read that, and there we are. We're good. Continue on as we normally would. Now I can turn that back off. Now, one other thing you'll notice is because we did that, that is no longer in numerical sequence. So the last thing we would do once we validated everything in here is just click on renumber. And now they're all in sequence for us. One other note that I want to show is the ability to capture the materials. From here, I can just click on my blue material button, select that, and that now becomes a new entry in the system. I can be populating other pieces of information in here, but more importantly, I can upload certifications and such that flow through this when it comes time to do any kind of document submission packets, CFC, etc. So now that we've accomplished that, let's look at bringing data back in. To do that, let's go back to the job we used to propagate Polyworks. With this open, we also need something to inspect against. So let's go to our samples. I'll create 3 of them called HighQA 1, 2, and 3. Now that we have these, let's go back to HighQA Connect and Polyworks Inspector to bring in some results. Before bringing in results, we should make sure that we have the information needed populated against our project. To do that, we simply click this Properties button, which will populate that information into here, again from HighQA. Additionally, this is setting this up as a piece template, which allows us to perform the next step, which is creating our samples to be inspected against. So with that, we can now click on Create Pieces. This will populate the samples into here that we just created in HighQA. I'm going to select the first one for us to populate against. Now we have that. The last step we need to do in this case is set up a virtual device because I do not have a CMM available to me at the moment. So we'll turn on offline simulation and we'll scan our part. All right, now that we've concluded the scanning, let's look at our results. For those of you who have Data Loop, we have a built-in integration that syncs the data between both of our databases. This allows you to leverage the tools that both are strongest in. We can break this into SPC data, we can look at heat maps. That is a simultaneous sync that shows the results in both systems. So you can dissect your models in Polyworks Inspector and in Data Loop, and evaluate the results inside Inspection Manager. We do also have other ways of bringing the data in. It can also come back in directly from the CMM. From inside here, we can also add non-conformance records for failures if need be, associating those to defect codes and operations for full traceability. The last piece that I want to show inside here is the reporting aspect. We have a PQP area for full submission packets. This may be any kind of documentation that you need for your customer's requirements, from balloon drawings to part submission warrants to PPAPs, process flows, control plans, FMEAs, gauge R&R, material certs, etc. And these can be customized as needed. We're going to focus specifically on the first article here. Inside each of these, we also have what we call workflows. This allows this to be controlled and making sure that your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed. The correct people are associated to tasks, and those can't move on unless they are completed. This also drives notifications in the system, as well as emails, to ensure that those are timely. Back on our document, this is what we call our interactive forms. Anything on here that's yellow, I can type in. The check boxes I can check, and then down here, these have full digital signatures tied into them. Then below that, we have the information that came in from our results. All of this finishing out the process to submit a quality product to our customers. Thank you for your time.
Gracias, Chad, por la explicación en el video. Es realmente sorprendente cómo la tecnología y la inteligencia artificial pueden ofrecernos todos estos beneficios como optimización de tiempo. Podemos ahorrar más de 20 horas en una pieza de 500 dimensiones, y ese es solo un ejemplo. Mejora la calidad, detecta ajuste automático entre el 2D y el 3D, generan mayor confianza con tus clientes, existen menos correcciones y menos retrabajos. Todos los procesos están conectados. HighQA se sincroniza en tiempo real con Polyworks y la información está ahí disponible para todos. Muy bien. Ahora estamos abiertos a sus preguntas. Podrán hacerlas en el recuadro de preguntas y respuestas y pues con gusto podremos atenderlas. Bien, aquí tengo algunas preguntas. ¿Qué sucedería si solo usamos Polyworks para prototipado y no para producción? Pues no hay problema. Seguirá observando una planificación de medición de 3 a 5 veces más rápida y menos errores, incluso en los flujos de trabajo de prototipado. No necesitas tener una gran producción a gran escala para obtener ahorros en tiempos y mejores en la precisión. Necesito data loop para usar HighQA Connect. No, en realidad no. Podemos empezar con un baloneo más rápido y una planificación 2D y 3D de inmediato. Pero con Polyworks Data Loop libera todo el potencial. Es una verdadera sincronización entre las bases de datos. Se acabaron las transferencias de archivos, los datos de calidad en tiempo real fluyen entre la ingeniería y metrología y control de calidad, lo que permite aprovechar la potencia de ambos sistemas. Ya usamos Polyworks. ¿Cuánto más rápido podría acelerar HighQA Connect realmente? HighQA Connect aprovecha la eficiencia de Polyworks y la multiplica. Por ejemplo, el ejemplo de 500 dimensiones programada tardan aproximadamente 30 horas en programarse con Polyworks, pero con HighQA Connect se redujo aproximadamente a 10 horas. Entonces, incluso los usuarios experimentados en Polyworks experimentan pues una aceleración drástica del proceso de medición. No sé si tengamos alguna otra pregunta. Lisa, I don't know if you have more questions there.
I do not, but feel free to type more in.
¿Es necesario configurar parámetros de escaneo? En realidad, los parámetros de escaneo los vas a realizar en Polyworks, pero una vez que tú escaneas la pieza, tú puedes correr todo el árbol de medición y automáticamente va a estar mandando esos datos de nuevo, ya sea Data Loop o HighQA. Espero que eso haya respondido a la pregunta. Muy bien, si no hay más preguntas, le estará llegando copia de esta webinario y pues muchas gracias por su atención. Estamos para servirles.